Good day, everyone. My name is Raymond Cheng, Head of Asia Equity Strategy with JP Morgan Private Bank. I'm very excited to have Benson Tam today with us. Benson is the founder of Venturous Group. Venturous Group is a group holding company with an investment focus in smart city tech infrastructure in China. So if I have to describe Benson in a few words, I would say he's a dream seeker with a clear vision. To start off with the dream part, right? Benson is one of the early pioneers who grew up in Hong Kong, but he really wanted to pursue a dream in China. So he relocated to Beijing almost 2 decades ago. So he's pretty much on the ground in China. So that's something that we really leverage and we really want to take advantage of today, because we are living in an environment where we are seeing lots of challenges facing the Chinese investment environment. So the other thing is Benson has a very clear vision. Like he wanted to help invest in smart city infrastructure. And this is a very interesting concept that I would want Benson to elaborate on later for us. So welcome, Benson.
Thank you, Raymond.
If I could please start out with a question. What exactly is smart city infrastructure?
Smart city is basically to make cities much more livable, sustainable, and productive. It is to put it, we all live in cities, but there's a lot more technology you can layer on top of it to make you live, work, and play better. One of the ways, the simplest way I would say is that I think in 10 years' time, you would see a lot of what I call programmable cities. But what is a programmable city? We'll talk about today, right, Raymond?
Absolutely, yes. And when you talk about like investing in infrastructure, right? People tend to just think about the physical hardware infrastructure, like highways, high speed internet. But how do you integrate the hardware part with the brain part, the artificial intelligence part? It's a very challenging concept. So can you talk more about that? Like,
yes.
Yeah. How do we invest in that in the market like China?
Right now? Well, I think city is a very big thing. Let's just focus on what I call the atom of the city, which is a building. Okay. Now, think about the building, the office building we're in, Raymond. For the last, let's say, 50 years. 50 years ago, the office building started having elevators. It then which is technology. It then have air conditioning, which is also technology. And then you started having underfloor wiring. And today, what is the technology you want? You want 5G, AI, IoT. You want a lot of augmented reality. There's so many things you want to be added in. Now, the way that I sometimes describe is that 20 years ago, you go into a hotel, there's no Wi-Fi, it's okay. But today, if your secretary checks you into a hotel with no Wi-Fi, I think the secretary will be fired, correct? Now, the same will be happening with cities, which is that we will take for granted all the technologies, which actually today, I think, Raymond, you use these video conferencing all the time. Yep. Imagine you're in a car, you're traveling to your next meeting, and then suddenly your Zoom doesn't work for 10 minutes.
Right.
You'll be very, very annoyed, correct? Okay. You just say, what is this city, right? So that's why, without us knowing it, we all think we have a phone. Actually, the phone is connected to all the sensors in the buildings, that's connected to the cloud, and you assume it's the whole citywide. So without us knowing, we are equipping cities with technology. And what we are saying is that it will be so important. It's like water, gas, and electricity. You need this technology, just like you needed the Wi-Fi in the hotel. So that's why, starting with buildings, but also in the whole city, you need to have a lot more advanced technology. And all of this just like the utilities of electricity, water, and gas, it's the infrastructure.
Okay, so building management and then traffic flow management,
City
all the way up
management,
to
everything.
energy efficiency, right?
Yes.
And how far are we from seeing smart cities in China? Many of us are new to this concept, right? Where are we in China?
Well, that's why I'm very willing to talk to you, Raymond, is people think, is it 10 years away, that we are still 10 years away from smart cities? No. In fact, in China, they started building these 10 years ago. I was lucky I invested in a company that does a lot of these upgrading of cities into smart cities, putting in the technology and all that. And they've been doing it for 10 years. How many do you think are being done nowadays? This company alone has done 170 cities, towns, and districts. We think 800 cities, towns, and districts in China is already quietly upgrading. You heard of 5G.
Yep.
AI is being delivered. IoT is coming. So all of them is upgrading. So not 10 years later, but now. In fact, if you go into China now, I can say there are specific cities and towns that are much more advanced. And you can actually experience how technology is helping them make it much more interesting. Yeah.
Give us one example where you have seen a very good development in a particular city. For those of us who may have a chance to really go back to China to visit one day, where should we go to check it out?
Well, Raymond, you must go to Hangzhou. Okay, Hangzhou is, I think, one of the most sizable cities that is most advanced. Partly because they've been working very closely with Alibaba, with AliCloud, with Alipay. So some of the things that you see in Hangzhou is, and remember, technology is never visible. I ask you, where is your 5G, where is your AI? You don't see it, right? But in Hangzhou, one day, hopefully, we can take all of them to look at the city brain of Hangzhou. The city brain that controls the traffic, that helps make sure that if there's an accident, that they then adjust the traffic lights so that, for example, the flow gets better. Another thing, for example, suddenly a patient with a heart attack just entered the ambulance. The control system will say, we need to get him from A to B fast. And the computer basically programs all the traffic lights to green and save you 15 minutes and save his life. So Hangzhou, you will see that. You don't see it on the street, but there is this place. There's also another, I would say, a pilot town within Hangzhou called Cloud Town. Cloud Town is a joint effort between AliCloud and Hangzhou city government to basically experiment and try and iterate on what really is a smart city. So you will see it quite a few places.
Thank you. Truly impressive. Like your investment vehicle already has almost 20% of the share, right? Based on the numbers you just shared, in terms of building the smart city infrastructure for China. Are you concerned about the increasingly regulated environment for China, especially around new economy industries? Because after all, you are involved in the digital transformation.
Right.
And we have been seeing a lot of the mega cap internet platform companies facing severe challenges, dealing with like a rising number of regulations. What's your take on that?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked that, Raymond. Now, the take I want to show people is I'm very lucky because I moved up to China around the time of the beginning of the internet. So I saw the whole digital sort of technology industry come along. And to be honest, in the last 20 years, because that's, the year 2000 was roughly when the internet originally came. This last 20 years, Chinese government effectively said, look, you guys, go ahead, do it. Don't ask for permission because nobody knows how it's done. Just do it. And that's why in 20 short years, China turned from basically a no information technology country to today, perhaps one of the most advanced in e-commerce, e-payment, advanced manufacturing. How on earth did they do it? By, I would say, giving them a free hand. So the pendulum swung all the way. And of course, when you let them have a free hand, I have a daughter, you have a son, they start to go crazy. Yeah, I think so. What is happening is that so they are pulling it back a little bit. Number one. Number two is that we are seeing a traditional economy mass migrating to this new world called the digital world, where this digital economy is coming out. Now, unfortunately, in a sense, this is like the new continent. And there's no rules, and there's very little regulation. But now suddenly everybody is there. And as everybody is there, then you start to have complaints from the customers and all that. So that's why I think regulation is healthy. It makes it sustainable. And in fact, I think it creates a level playing field. And the last point I want to make is, what are they doing? Data privacy, anti-monopoly. Guess what? It's happening in the US, it's happening in Europe, it's happening everywhere. I think it's just the time in the internet's, timeline where the crossing over point is that instead of having a free-for-all development, time to have some sort of rules and regulations that is a little bit more strict, which protect people's privacy, data privacy, and protect the latecomers that they are not subject to monopolistic, anti-competitive behavior.
You spoke about property management being part of the game plan, right? But after all, these days, what has troubled the investment world is the tightening that is going on with the property market. So what do you think about the Evergrande situation, and is that going to create a Lehman moment in China?
Well, first of all, the easiest part, will it create a Lehman moment? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Is the property sector under stress? Yes. I would also say, why are people so surprised? From us, we have been seeing this almost falling off a cliff in slow motion for the last 2 years. We have seen that stress, especially in the biggest property developers. And it's been happening. Okay, so to answer your question, perhaps I give you 3 observations, and then we can explain why I do that. I would say, Raymond, first of all, I think worrying now is right. It's right because it is scary, but to be honest, I think it is myopic and it's overdone. Okay, and I'll explain later. But what do I suggest? Take a deep breath, take a step back, see the big picture. Okay, I think see the big picture, and this is where I will, in a sense, give you what I think is the next 10 years big picture. Okay, that's number one. Number 2 is don't just focus on the old economy. I think when we look at property, Evergrande, this is the old economy. But what is rising in China is the new economy. So don't just focus on what is happening on the old economy, because the new digital economy is coming. And so rather than to say this is where sort of the economy is transforming, there is the rise of these new ones. And for the old economy, it's not about them, oh, they will die off, they won't. I think they have a lot of resources. The old economy will transform into the new economy, but it will take some time. And meanwhile, another way for some of these investors is focus on the new economy. If you look at that, you'll see amazing things that are already shooting up through the soil, through the roots, and through all of that, right? As you have seen in some of the new energy companies that you cover, Raymond. Yeah? So that's the second point. We are looking at perhaps the wrong place. The third one is, as I said, this shifting from old economy to new economy is going to be permanent. I think what the Chinese government has realized is that they are facilitating the entire economy to mass migrate to this new digital economy. Because, and I will make one more statement here, I call this the old digital economy. What was the birth time? Roughly November 2019. I can almost pinpoint to the month when this old digital economy came out. And for the time being, I'll be a little bit of a teaser, and I'll tell you why later on, shall we?
Sure.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, but you have lived in Beijing for almost 2 decades. How are people on the ground thinking about all these changes that are happening? That many of the outsiders, including myself, right, would feel very disturbed by all these changes 1 week after another. So what's the feeling on the street?
Now, I would do it by looking at the demographic of a city, let's say Beijing, okay? You have the very, very rich, the billionaires. You then have the middle class, and then you have the people who are sort of above the poverty line but never then struggling in the cities, okay? The workers and all that. I think all of them will react differently, correct? If you're the billionaires, you have a lot of stocks, you have a lot of stocks in Evergrande, then of course you are very, very unhappy, right? Clearly, because you've been making a lot of money. But I think if you then go to the middle class, now the middle class has been very, very stressed. Take the example of my own staff, mid-40s, a family, children. He worries about whether he can afford to buy his property because it's so expensive. He worries about how much he spends on his daughter's education because it's an arms race amongst parents. Everybody is going there. They are spending a lot of money on that. So I asked him, what does he think about this education reform? He said, oh, thank God somebody is doing something because I can hardly breathe, he said. And he only has one kid, okay? So I would say for the middle class, I think initially they were a little bit confused, but generally I think they can see that this is for them, and I think there is a certain sigh of relief in the middle class. For the bottom, then of course, anything that can help them would be welcome. So that's why it comes back to this so-called, how do you make sure that the whole society is sustainable? That's really where I would say. So to a short answer to your question, I think a lot of people are happy about it.
Very interesting. And your example actually touched on two of the big cost mountains, right? The typical middle class individuals in China are now characterizing, which are the high housing costs and high education costs, right? And then the other one is medical costs.
Yes.
So basically, these are the focal points of the common prosperity policy focus that the Xi administration is very much advocating these days. So are you saying basically that the middle class would form pretty much the core focus of the where China is heading in the next 5 to 10 years' time? And so it's very important to think alongside how we can make the lives of the middle class in China better, and also go along with that policy focus in your investment strategy.
I think, like I said, the pendulum has swung too far for the billionaires. And so, like you says, the middle class is very, very stressed. Even in Beijing, even though the property price in Beijing is still less than Hong Kong, I think, look at Hong Kong. I think if you look at Hong Kong, you look at the middle class, you look at a couple, both of them professionals, they still can hardly afford a decent house. Well, not even a house, a decent apartment. Okay? So I sometimes call it that in Hong Kong, frankly, the middle class has been killed. Okay? Now, I think that's why for China, they worry that I cannot do that, because that really is the core of the productivity in terms of talents,
Yes.
in terms of new people coming on. So that's why they need to de-stress and save the middle class, because without that, you really do not have a sustainable society.
And the number one big risk, right, China wanted to avoid is to have social unrest, like what happened in Hong Kong 2 years back. So I think that's probably another underlying motivation behind all these radical policy changes.
Yes.
And how would this policy environment, this highly regulated environment, affect your investment philosophy? Have you seen a reduction in investment opportunities, or the other way around because of what has been happening over the last 10 months or so?
Well, I think rightfully a lot of people have slowed down to see what is happening. Sort of almost like, okay, something's suddenly changed, so I need to, in a sense, sit back, reconsider, look at the new picture, and then carry on. But I would also say that from where I sit, the smart money has been very actively coming in, because this is a huge buying opportunity. If you look at the graphs, you look at the headlines, this is a classic case of what I call a maximum panic and chaos. And this is effectively, I call it the annual sale of Harrods. So I would say the smart money is coming in, is definitely coming in. And I think to your point about regulation is, like I said, I see it as basically correcting excesses. I see it as saving the middle class, which is good, which is excellent. Now, to me, also, to make it very, very simple, it's called the David and Goliath, okay? Goliath, the big juggernauts, the Alibaba, the Tencent, the Baidu, they are being, in a sense, slowed down. And it gives, actually, we invest in Davids, we invest in a little bit smaller companies. So it actually creates a much more level playing field. So we love it. So I am actually going full tilt into creating, into building into these companies, because we used to have a Chinese saying, we call it the BAT as the three mountains, and 山做大山, right? And unless you know how to compete with them, you ain't going to get nowhere, correct? Suddenly the government helped us to remove the three mountains for the time being. So for the Davids, I think this is a great time.
So I guess after all, the Chinese government is very focused on propelling innovation, as this is the focal point of the next 14th five-year plan. And I guess the other direction China is moving towards is to set up a stock exchange in Beijing, right? Which creates additional funding channel for some of the small, medium enterprises.
Yes.
And so while a lot of people are concerned for emerging platforms that are facing increasing difficulty to be listed in the US, now you have an offset, right? You have a potential additional listing value.
Absolutely, Raymond. I mean, if you take a step back, again, that's why I say take a step back, and look at the big picture. Chinese companies listed in China, isn't that normal? Why would Chinese companies be listed elsewhere? That's abnormal, right? You look at India, you look at any other country. Indian companies list in India, right? Japanese companies list in Japan. So I think, like you said, China is growing up the capital market is growing up. It took a lot of windy roads, sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but I think it's happening.
That's right.
It's happening. Yeah.
Good to hear. Going to your specific investment track record, I wanted to do a deep dive in it.
Okay.
If you could start out, share with us an example of success, and on the contrary, another example where you have seen some challenges or even failure, but there's something that you have possibly got a lot out of.
Okay. Well, example of success is actually a company that maybe people have not heard of, but I think you will hear a lot in the next few years, is a company called iSoftStone. Okay, I've been invested in that company for almost 14, 15 years now. Okay, now that is my typical style. When I see a good CEO and a good company, I want to be long term. That's number one. Number two is that we are deeply in partnership with them. So we have actually taken the company through 3 transformations. We've got it listed in New York Stock Exchange, delisted, and now coming back to be listed inside of China. So we work very closely with them. So closely that, for example, the CTO of iSoftStone Group is now Chief Science Officer of Venturous Group. And so we share information. You know, we see all the next generation technology. They see all of the digital transformation of existing economies, and having somebody in there as a bridge. And don't forget, I mean, so that's the type of things we do, which is that very long term, very CEO centric, what I call winning wars with the CEO. So we are not the typical investor. I love going in shoulder to shoulder and set strategy, do stuff, win markets, build the company from, as I say, 15 years. That's our style. Very different. I would say almost as a developer rather than an investor. Okay, and then failures. There are too many, Raymond. There's absolutely too many. But I think my philosophy on companies that fail is that we can lose the money, but we will never accept losing the relationship. Meaning that, for example, there was a very famous CEO, I won't mention his name. We lost money, okay? We basically wrote off the investment. He said, of all the people, we were the one who helped him most. And guess what? Out of his own pocket, he pulled out 50 cents on the dollar and said, this is what I'm going to give back to you. That's number one. Number two, because we kept the relationship, even though we lost the money, we made a lot of money back afterwards when he gave us one opportunity. He said, this is my best buddy. He is a great CEO. We think he will make it, and this is an opportunity. And so he got us in, and that made us a lot of money. Yeah. So on the failures, what I'm saying is that in China, it's like this, which is that companies don't go like that. Yep. Company is almost dying, maybe dead, so found another company. So always flatlining. Think Meituan. Your CEO of Meituan was exactly like that, 3-4 times. And then suddenly one day he hits jackpot, boom. Why does it happen like that? Because there's so many opportunities in China. It's fast evolving, fast developing. So you only need to catch one opportunity. And every single time when he almost died, he learned. So that's why we say we must keep the relationship. Even if he lost me money, I still want to be good friends, because hopefully he learned his lesson, and next time he's actually a better CEO. So again, it's a different mindset to winning and losing money that is beyond just that one deal. It is about the CEO, the relationship. It's everything. Yeah. So again, long answer to your simple question. Sorry about that.
No, very helpful. But as an investor, right?
Yes.
Do you have a target investment return in mind? I know you think long term, but you still want to make money, right? At the end of the day. So how do you balance that?
Okay. I like that, Raymond, but I don't have a conventional answer. My answer is, what do I optimize? Enduring compound returns. I want 2 decades later, I still make 20-25% return. You look at a lot of the so-called unicorns that we have backed, it's a 20-year game, 30-year game. So I don't even need to worry about them. So enduring compound return. But that's a long term.
Correct.
That's a long win. I then mix it with what I call the short win. Short win is I look at how quickly I can cover my cost. Okay? Meaning that if I've made, let's say, 3, 4x, 5x, I cover my cost so that it's pure gravy and then ride the gravy for 15, 20 years. Okay? That's really my philosophy. Quick win and long win. And that's why I don't give you a 25% IRR or whatever else. You know who else think about things like this? The businessman thinks like that. He thinks about when is my break even, and he thinks I want this to keep printing money for me forever. Correct? You go to any entrepreneur or the richest families, the richest patriarchs, they all think about it. When do I get my money back, and how long can I make money for? Correct? So that's how I think of it. And so I cover the downside and hopefully have an infinite upside. And that infinite upside, you can't just sit there. That's why you have to be part of the game together with the CEO helping him. Because if you don't do that, one day he'll say, my God, Benson made so much money. Why the hell should I let him carry on making all that money? He just sits there and do nothing, right? So you have to be his partner. You have to demonstrate that you are making it worth his while to keep you as an investor.
Sure. And going back to iSoftStone, right?
Sure.
As one of the portfolio companies that are integral to helping you execute on the vision of this smart city tech concept. How you think about handling the relationships with the city governments, the provincial governments? Do you see a risk that now Evergrande situation would put a lot of pressure on these governments, financially speaking, because after all, land sales account for a very meaningful part of the fiscal revenue. Do you see them trying to squeeze pricing out of the companies that you invest in as you negotiate for contracts with them?
Yeah, well, again, old economy, new economy. So smart city, the city is mostly there. The hardware is done, the buildings are there, okay? But you are just adding the smartness, the new technology into this old town, right?
Yeah.
Adding stuff. Now, the reason why Evergrande and all that really doesn't matter to us is because what these 800 cities and towns and districts, why are they doing all of that? It's because it's almost like an arms race for the best companies and for the best talents. Imagine your SenseTime, imagine your DD. Where will you put your company headquarters in? Where will you put all your talented, AI scientists at? It will be at the cities that has the best infrastructure, or the digital infrastructure and so on. So that's why everybody is trying to grab the best companies, the best talents. And that's why they are all, in a sense, trying to get smart. So for us, that's the market reality, which is which is why sort of around 1718, I saw the tipping point. The reason is that iSoftStone, before that, they always have to go to the city mayors, and they are at a disadvantage. But after around 1718, the CEO said, hey, something strange happened this week. 3 mayors came to me. It never happened before. He said, and then we say, aha, the demand and supply has flipped. They want this more than we can supply them. So that's why, to your point, I think this is already happening. Don't forget, I mean, smart city tech as a market in China next year, 2022, our sponsored research says would be a $4 trillion market. Yeah. So, and there are very few people who actually can do it. So that's why the demand and supply is at a very, very different. Yeah.
What do you see as your key competitive advantages of your portfolio companies to go in and get business from these local city governments?
I would say, first of all, is that they have a technology that is cutting edge. You can't get away from that. You have to be good at what you do. The second thing is that a smart city is a very complex multi-system integration. If you even think of a small town, let's say, we're in Hong Kong, so Taikushing is one of them, 2 square kilometers. What is in there? I say 100 buildings, 10,000 companies, around 1 million travelers and residents going through Taikushing every year. Now, the question of smart city really is integrating all of that. No joke. You then add 5G, AI, IoT, and all that. No joke. Okay? So I guess the other thing that we are good at is that we, together with the cities, become almost like the conductor, orchestrating all these technology to integrate together. So that's why the key advantage, I would say, is that they themselves are very good, and we are providing almost like an umbrella so almost a platform, put it this way, so that they can plug and play and it all works together magically. Yeah.
Amazing. And if I have to ask you how to de-stress yourself, given like it's definitely not relaxing all the time, to think about investment decisions in China.
Yeah, well, Raymond, I think I've been in the business for 30 years. I have a model that is CEO-centric. I've known them a lot of times for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So I'm basically working with my friends, number one. Number two, I think smart cities is not just a way to make money. Smart cities is really creating the lifestyle and the environment for my daughter. My daughter, 26-year-old, if I can give her an environment that is safe, secure, productive, sustainable, green, oh my God, I mean, why shouldn't I do it? And to answer your question, finally, this is just fun because I started off as a civil engineer. And guess what? I'm a failed civil engineer because I've never done a single building yet. Some of my classmates are very successful in that region, and therefore this is perhaps my last chance to actually build something meaningful as my legacy.
I'm not going to expose your age, but you definitely don't look like this is going to be your last project.
I don't mind,
But
you can guess from my daughter's age, right?
Yes, pretty much, right? But we're keeping that as a secret.
Sure.
But if I have to think from the audience standpoint,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
A lot of us here do not necessarily have the privilege of living in the mainland for 20 odd years. But many of us have a passion and interest in investing in China as a market, whether it be listed or unlisted opportunities. So what would be some of your words of wisdom for us to navigate this kind of challenging environment where we are?
I think the best is come in and experience it yourself. That's why all those years ago, 19 years ago, I basically moved myself inside because I believe there's nothing better than to be there on the ground, experiencing everything, the business practice, the negotiation, the people, the ethos, and everything else. So that's the best. But in COVID, of course, that is difficult. No, the next best thing is to have reliable, trusted experts inside of China. You know, who is it in there? Who is your safe pair of hands? Who you know you can trust? Who can give you a good piece of advice, right? I think that would be ideal. For me, I think, you know, that would be the CEOs inside. So if people can somehow develop relationships with CEOs who are, you know, some of the best ones in China, that would be great. Now, that is also difficult, you know. At the risk of doing advertising for you, Raymond, and JP Morgan, I would just say JP Morgan, right? You know, the coverage, the depth, the long relationship, you know, yourself, you know, you have spent so much time on this. Yeah, isn't it?
You're definitely correct. I must say, finding the trusted investment advisory partners are definitely integral, right?
Yes.
And also tapping people on the ground like yourself to be able to leverage the network of professionals and executives that you built along the way is very important. And so that's why we as a firm are also very empathetic about the fact that we wanted to do our own due diligence to find the right investment opportunities for our clients. So thank you very much, Benson, for your time. I think let me sum up a few key points here. I think Benson, having spent over 20 years in Beijing, still thinks that the current environment, while very challenging, especially for the old economy industries, could present a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity, especially for long-term investors, to think about some of the new economy companies that can help shape China's future in the next decade. And so now it's better than ever before to think about putting some of the long-term investment bets into areas such as infrastructure, which entails the smart city tech infrastructure piece that Benson has enlightened us today on, which is extremely important because China is really putting a lot of emphasis and investment dollars into this area. So we are very excited about this opportunity, and thank you, Benson, for sharing with us your experiences along the journey. And we hope to have you back again in the future to talk about your next developments.
Well, thank you, Raymond. Like I said, I'm all in China. Thank you,
Benson. Thank you, everyone.
But we can do a little bit of in Cantonese and English, and I think that would be great.
So just some rapid fire questions for you, Benson.
I have one question I really want to ask you.
Okay. Who's your favorite singer?
Huh?
Who's your favorite singer?
Oh, definitely Lim Zicheng, George Lam.
Oh, George Lam.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He never ages, just like you.
He never ages. Oh, yeah, well, if you say that, I'll say that too.
And what's your favorite song of his?
Wow, so many. There's so many of them. One of them is in Cantonese is 最愛是誰.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that is a beautiful song.
It is.
But there are so many of them. I think a lot of his songs are great because it doesn't talk about love. It talks about dreams, youth, and everything. Yeah,
that's so true.
Yeah. And he's real. He's true. I mean, in the sense that he talks about himself. He sings about himself, and that's why I think he's great. Yeah.
You would laugh if I tell you what was the song I love the most.
Yeah.
It's the 數字歌.
Oh yes.
34600. That's the one that I love the most because it really.
3062470.
Yes.
3062470.
That could be your next career.
34202 34唔記得啦. So I
3947.
forgot.
Excellent. And what are your key hobbies? What do you like doing the most?
Traveling, reading, watching movies.
Who's your most favorite movie director?
Oh, definitely Wang Kar-wai. Wang Kar-wai. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot what his English name is.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Mood for Love. Oh, that is a classic, right?
I can see the romantic side in you.
I'm a
Despite the
dreamer.
entrepreneurial spirit.
Like I said, I'm a dreamer.
That's
I think we all look to that. I think it's about art. The best CEOs I've met are always artists. They're never scientists. They're never merchants. They're never others. And money never means anything to them. So that's why I think, Wang Jiawei basically embodies that. Every single film is a labor of love. Another one that I love the most is 一代宗师, 一代宗师. So Grandmaster.
Yeah.
Okay. I sometimes tell my overseas friends, if you really want to understand China, watch that film. And you probably have to watch it so many times and you still may not get everything, because it's not just about Kung Fu, it's about culture. It's about families. It's about loyalty. It's about so many things. It's almost like everything distilled into one easy package. So I always say to people, watch it, tell me what you see, and I'll tell you, you probably got about 5% of what Chinese actually think.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Benson.
Okay? Well, next time, I will get you to fess up, okay? Thank you, Raymond.
No, thank you. Thank you, Benson.
Good. Done.